It's time for the Wrestling Observer Extra.
One more time for old time's sake.
With Dave Meltzer, right here on The Law. Live audio wrestling.
And let's go. My now smoking with the best.
You betcha, it's the second hour of The Law. That means it is Dave Meltzer time, the editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Dave, Monday night, we're going to start here chatting Hall of Fame. This time they got to it before the video game. Kurt Angle.
Yeah, no kidding. I know.
Did that surprise you, or did you know this was coming?
I didn't know it was coming, but, I mean, I knew it was a possibility. But, yeah, no, I didn't know. The video game I was more expecting.
Yeah.
I was expecting that chronology would be the video game and then the Hall of Fame next year.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, looking at Kurt Angle now, obviously this would make him very happy. It's something that he's wanted. How do you see him fitting into the WWE landscape post Hall of Fame? I feel as though Hall of Fame is going to be the first thing. All this, we've had callers say Royal Rumble, but no, Hall of Fame probably the first thing. What do you see happening after that with Kurt?
I think maybe like a brand ambassador or something like that, you know, someone who kind of goes around and everything like that. I mean, if he can pass a physical, I'm sure he'll do a match because he might as well. I mean, he can do it. But if he can't pass a physical, but I don't see it like being like, you know, more than a couple matches. You know, even if he can pass a physical, it doesn't really. Maybe like one big, you know, maybe one big match and maybe a retirement match. That would be about it. I don't think that you want to push it. He's 48 years old now.
He'll become another general manager because they don't have enough of those on TV already.
Well, maybe he can. Yeah, I know. He could be. He could end up in that role at some point if they need to replace Mick Foley. Yeah,
I could see it happen definitely. What else about Hall of Fame this year, Dave? I mean, we've heard a couple names: Rick Rude, DDP. What else? It doesn't seem like that great of a collection this year.
Compared to some years, no. It kind of disappointed me. In fact, if it didn't have Kurt, I would think it'd be like a pretty weak collection. Mm-hmm. Really, I mean, the weakest ever, actually, if it wasn't for Kurt.
Well, Rick Rude, DDP, who else have we got?
Beth Phoenix?
Beth Phoenix.
With Christian William Regal.
Wow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And the Natural Disasters.
That's right. Yeah, jeez. Yeah, that does seem kind of lackluster.
Along with that, let's go from the one great American hero, Kurt Angle, to another great American hero, as we saw on Raw on Monday, because Jimmy Snuka to WWE is still a hero. Dave, I was pretty disgusted last week talking about this, and even more so with what the WWE did. I did not think that they would go this far.
I agree. I was really surprised, you know, especially with the mailer, because the mailer got a lot of people upset because it's like, you know, you could always turn off your TV, but that mailer just kind of like hit you. You know what I mean?
Sorry, let's just define that for our listeners. So there was an email sent out that was saying...
They sent out an email blast to celebrate the life of Jimmy Snuka with this collection of Jimmy Snuka matches on the network. I don't mind them putting Jimmy Snuka matches on the network, but I just don't think they should have advertised it as a big thing and celebrate the life of Jimmy Snuka.
Yeah.
Just a little too strong for me.
It was the tone of the vignette, right? Like, I expected a vignette. I wasn't surprised by that, but it was the tone of it, Dave, where it's just like, and I realized to Vince he's a special performer from that period, but I just thought, this is just too over the top.
Well, you could tell by the crowd reaction.
Yes.
The crowd was really...
Yes.
And that's why I was surprised about the mailer, because they saw the crowd reaction. They saw how uncomfortable the crowd was. So it's kind of like, you know what? This probably isn't the right thing to do. I mean, like, I expected the graphic.
Yep.
I expected them, you know, saying they feel bad for the family and everything, because I feel bad for the family. Very bad. And as far as, like, a video, I thought maybe they would do a video. It wasn't like the video was a bad idea either, but there was I guess just the nature of how the video was put together.
Yeah.
When it was in about the middle of that video, I was going like, this is really bad. You know, because I kept thinking, you know, if the NFL did this with O.J. Simpson,
right,
the closest, you know, comparison I could come up with, they would be raked over the coals.
Yeah.
But it's wrestling, and everyone kind of looks the other way.
Yeah.
Pretty gross. But that's the industry we cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a company that is trying to bust into North America, and that is New Japan. Setting up a California territory, starting with the first shows being the G1 shows July 1st and 2nd. How serious are they about busting into the U.S. here, Dave?
They're very serious.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a good idea. I think New Japan coming in and doing 2 to 4 big shows a year. I think that's a great idea, but running a full-time territory, I think, is a terrible idea.
So how is this going to work? They're just going to be running California with regular shows and flying their guys over, or have a whole New Japan set of performers that are just based here?
I'm understanding it as like a satellite promotion based in California that would probably tour to other, do some shows in other places, but mostly work California. And it would be guys under contract, because they really do have too many. The one thing they do have is too many people on their roster for the house shows, because that's why we got all these like 8 and 10 man tags all through those house shows, because they've got so many guys, and there's a lot more guys they could sign that they want, but they don't have any space for them. So in that sense, they have enough talent to do it. I just think that, 2 tours of Japan would probably be better than a tour, than doing the second tour in California, because I just feel touring, they need stronger television.
That's it. All they have is the Access TV, right? Like, I mean, that doesn't. A lot of people don't get to see that, and
it's outdated too.
Yeah,
in the sense of it's not like, it doesn't have like current angles and things like that. But touring Major League Wrestling is tough. I mean, even WWE doesn't knock them dead at the house shows these days, and everyone else is doing in the hundreds. I mean, their idea is like trying to do 1,000 people, which I think that like first time in every city you can do 1,000 people. I'm pretty sure actually, but with repeat visits, I don't know. I mean, if they had super strong television, maybe.
I mean,
but it's tough. That's a tough. You could lose a lot of money doing like that kind of a territory.
It strikes to me that it should really just be 1 or 2 a year, and it's like hardcore fans are the ones that are going to appreciate this kind of show. You're not going to really convert a lot of new fans with this, so they should just keep a couple special events and then just work at that.
Yeah, I think that they should do like on their, because their schedule is pretty much like an annual thing, almost like WWE in a lot of ways, except even stricter in the sense that the big shows are always in the same type of city. You know what I mean? It's like, May is Fukuoka, April and October are going to be Sumo Hall type of thing, right? So I think that they should do like maybe like one show, and maybe even in Los Angeles, where it's like a pay-per-view, and you give up like maybe the May show or the June show. You do one, and it's there every year, and it's a big show, and it's broadcast back to Japan. I like that idea. And then all the hardcores could come in because they know they're getting the one show a year.
Well, that's almost similar to what Ring of Honor does with Toronto. They do the big show in May, they get the New Japan guys on it, and it's always successful every year for that one big show.
Yeah. That may be the way to go. Plus, they're still sending guys on tours to Ring of Honor. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, it's your only chance to see those guys.
Yes.
I do think that, one big like New Japan pay-per-view done in the United States every year. I think that I'd like to think they could do like 3,500 people, and I may be optimistic on that. But it may be valuable just for the idea of the promotion in Japan doing a successful show annually in the United States kind of looks good and makes them look good for the Japanese market. So there is that, but full-time territory where you're running around, San Jose and Fresno and stuff, drawing 400 people, I just think that's a waste of a lot of time.
Keeping with New Japan and their, getting into the North American market, their English commentator is now going to be Don Callis. Was this
interesting?
Yeah, was this a surprise?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Because,
he's not
Don,
who I would expect to pick.
Yeah, and I guess it was, the influence of Kenny Omega, because they're friends.
Right, yeah, they're both from Winnipeg, yeah.
They're both from Winnipeg, exactly. Yeah, Don hasn't been around much. I would have, I know he's got a regular job with the province of Manitoba, I believe it is. So I've talked to him, several times over the years, and it was always like, he never had that itch to me where he wanted to get back into wrestling. In fact, I always felt that he was very happy to be out of wrestling. But this is something where you're kind of like, he's not really in wrestling. His full-time job is going to stay his full-time job, and it just requires, several, maybe, a weekend a month going to Japan type of a thing, so he can pull it off. But yeah, when I heard the name, I was surprised. It just came out of nowhere.
It just strikes me as someone that I don't, how familiar is he with the New Japan product?
He's not familiar with it, but in time, if he goes there once a month, he's a really smart guy. If he goes there once a month, I think in 3 or 4 months, if he does that and just kind of studies the history and reads up on it, I think he'll be fine. Right, right away, I do think there'll be a growing curve or whatever.
Sure.
Because if you remember when Carino and Kelly started, they grew into it. They're much better now. They're both much better now than they were when they started. So, and I think that Don would be the same thing in the sense that, he's going to start, and it's going to be kind of new to him. And then once he learns the guys and learns their moves and learns their history and is there every month and talks to everyone, I think at that point, a couple months in, he'll probably, then we'll see how good he is. But, I don't think he's going to be like perfect first time in. The one good thing is that the first time he's going, which is February, he's going to be there for a week. So that's
right.
You can learn a lot in a week.
He can immerse himself in it, yeah.
Right.
Now, bringing the commentators up, do you know of anything that's happening with Ring of Honor and the color guy that's going in there with Josh Barnett's
No, I don't,
name?
because at the last show they rotated guys, so they didn't have like a guy who worked with Kevin Kelly. So I don't know who I don't know right now.
All right, let's talk about Mexico now. We're just going all over the world with you.
International.
Pentagon Jr. quitting AAA and working with Conan now. What's happening in Mexico here? Seems like a bit of a mass exodus.
Yeah, everyone wants to get at AAA. I mean, that's the thing. And the only thing that was keeping a lot of those guys is the Lucha Underground contract. And now, I mean, there's uncertainty with Lucha Underground because of the long delay.
Yeah.
And so that opened the door to things as well. But Pentagon, he was like probably their hottest guy, but he wasn't pushed like their hottest guy. For whatever reason in AAA, they're very traditionalist and they have certain people who they push on top. And also this year it was all about pushing Dr. Wagner Jr. and Psycho Clown. So for their 1 year build mask match. Yeah. I mean, it's a big loss, and now it's so weird because Dorian Roldan was just named like head of talent relations and the guy kind of in charge of doing tours and everything for Lucha Underground if they do house shows, and now all these guys are quitting his company.
Yeah, that's
So
the
what does
question.
that mean?
What happens for Lucha Underground? Do they lose a ton of performers now too, or do they keep these guys?
Well, they're under contract. They're going to have to make a call because they make a call that they're going to cut. Him and Sexy Star have been pushed like crazy.
Yes,
on that show.
yeah, suro.
And they're two that quit. So if they get rid of them and they get rid of Phoenix, who's also one of their best guys, if they get rid of them and Dago wasn't working much for them, so he's not really a factor as compared to the other ones. But if they do that, it really weakens the next season of Lucha Underground, and also would be really interesting to see because I could see, Ring of Honor or TNA or even WWE wanting Pentagon and Phoenix if they were free agents. So it's a really interesting. Or they just go in there and just go, look, I mean, I know you guys quit AAA, but we need you and still use them, which would probably encourage more people to quit AAA because it's like, okay, now we know we don't have to stay in AAA and we can work indies in the United States.
Get better money.
And make more money rather than work in AAA and we'll keep our Lucha Underground TV.
Quickly, Dave, we're going to go to the UK before we have to say goodbye, and that's Pete Dunne, Mark Andrews, and Trent Seven. We're pulled by WWE from a live podcast taping in London that's going to happen next weekend. Also, there's new restrictions around what they can and can't do and where they can appear on TV for something that originally we heard wasn't going to restrict what they could do. It already seems very restrictive with these guys that were in the UK Championship Tournament.
Yeah, well, we kind of, I'm not surprised, although they were so adamant that this wasn't going to happen, and then it happened like immediately. So it's that's kind of funny, but I'm not surprised. The podcast. Okay, so the podcast being pulled, no one has said because you're not going to say this, but if you look at it, it's on the 28th, that Saturday, and I know that they're bringing guys from the UK into the Royal Rumble. So I think that they probably pulled those guys to bring them to San Antonio. So there is a legitimate reason, as opposed to in some of the shows where they just pulled guys, or they actually didn't pull anyone. They just said that these guys couldn't work. They couldn't work on any. They can't be streamed. You know what I mean? Or they can't be on TV. They can't be streamed. They can't be taped in any form, which is a different thing. But they actually pulled the guys from the podcast, which is not necessarily they're in a war with podcasts. I think they're bringing those guys to San Antonio, and if that's the reason, then that's understandable.
All righty, there you go. All right, Dave, we got to say goodbye for this week. What is up in the Observer?
Well, a lot more on. I'm sure a lot more is going to break on the Pentagon story, and more on Jimmy Snuka, and more on the UK stuff, and I guess the final preview of the Royal Rumble. And how everything's switching around because, let's face it, next Sunday when we talk after the Rumble,
Yeah.
we're gonna probably have a real good idea
lot
of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Be a very exciting
Lot
week.
to talk about, yeah.
And look forward to chatting with you next week at this same time, Dave.
Okay, have a great week.
You too. Dave Meltzer, WrestlingObserver.com is where you can find his great work. And it's always exciting around the Rumble. Lots of stuff falling into place for WrestleMania.